Hello, and welcome to another segment of Mineral Minute. My name is Brock Ortner, Extension Educator for the Northern Panhandle. In today's segment, this is going to be a really timely topic as we start looking ahead to grass turnout, because with this comes increased risk for developing grass tetany. And in order to avoid this, we can supplement magnesium strategically in this at-risk period to help offset any risk of developing tetany in our cow herd. When we think about the age distribution of cows in the cow herd, older cows are at increased risk of developing grass tetany, largely driven by increased milk production. When we look at the magnesium requirements for our gestating and lactating animals, lactating animals require more, and the post-calving period immediately following calving is especially critical. The magnesium concentration in colostrum is 3 times what it is in later milk. So we need to make sure that we have our magnesium supplementation program in line and clicking before we get to calving, especially if we're calving on grass, to make sure that we're meeting the cow's requirement during gestation when we see that uptick. Some symptoms of grass tetany include excitability, decreased feed intake, soft tissue calcifications, muscle twitching, and in advanced cases, convulsions and even death. In a production setting, when we turn these cows out to grass, it's not likely that we're going to be able to maintain really close observation of the animals. So in a lot of cases, the first time that producers notice that they have a grass tetany issue is when a cow turns up dead in the pasture. So like I said, making sure that we have our magnesium program in line before this point is really important to prevent this. So magnesium is commonly thought to be deficient when grass tetany occurs. However, this is a little bit of a misnomer because even when our forages have adequate magnesium concentrations, grass tetany can occur largely driven by this interaction between nitrogen and potassium in the rumen that impairs magnesium availability to the cow. And this table showing magnesium concentrations of grasses across the state does a really good job of portraying this. Across the state, when we look at magnesium concentrations, all of these would be expected to meet the cow's lactation requirement. However, when we look at crude protein, which is a good proxy for how much nitrogen is in the feedstuff, especially in the premium grasses, which would be in line with what we would expect from this early season growth from our cool season grasses, these all are really high quality feeds and have abundant crude protein. This, coupled with increased potassium, puts these cows at a risk for developing grass tetany. This is especially true for our improved pastures where additional fertilizer has been applied for increased forage production. So looking at how we want to supplement magnesium, with the cow's requirement of 0.20, high mag minerals will contain anywhere from 12 to 15% magnesium in a 4-ounce intake mineral. So what this will end up supplying is about 0.09 to 0.12% to the total diet, about 50 to 60% of the cow's lactation requirement. It's also important to go through how we aim to deliver our magnesium supplement. If we're wanting to use a fortified feedstuff such as cake or pellets, it's important that we supply salt separately. It's been shown that sodium is really important for magnesium absorption across the rumen, and making sure that these cows have adequate salt availability is important for making sure that they're getting full use of the magnesium that we're giving them. We can also hand feed our magnesium oxide supplement at a rate of about 5 pounds per 100 cows each day to ensure that they're meeting their lactating requirements. However, if we're using a free choice mineral, on the other hand, it's important that we do not provide salt separately. Magnesium oxide is really bitter for cattle and will likely decrease the intake of this mineral. So when they're given the choice between salt and our loose mineral, they're likely going to consume more salt and decrease their intake of our mineral. And this is also why it's important that we start feeding our high mag mineral early, about 1 month before pasture turnout. And if we're not seeing the intakes that we'd like to see, looking at the targeted intake on the feed tag, we can improve the patability of our mineral mix by adding 1 pound of corn or DDGs per 50 pounds of this mineral mix. So with starting relatively early, we can back down on magnesium as these plants get more mature, more stemmy, and start developing seed heads. Unfortunately, pasture turnout is not the only point in time that our cows may be at risk of developing tetany. Winter tetany can be observed when cows are receiving stored feedstuffs, especially diets containing high amounts of good quality alfalfa hay and diets containing low quality forages and increase incorporation of DDGs. So with diets with a high proportion of good quality alfalfa, when we look at these feedstuffs, making sure that we test them not only for magnesium, but also calcium and potassium is important for guiding our magnesium program. So when magnesium is less than roughly 0.15, calcium less than 0.4, and potassium greater than 2.5, this would be an indicator that we need to supply additional magnesium to help offset this interaction. For our diets with low quality forages and increased distillers grains, this is really getting more common as producers start looking towards dry lotting cows because it's cost competitive with pasture lease or purchasing land in their area. So these diets are at increased risk of winter tetany, especially for our lactating cows because DDGs has relatively high sulfur and nitrogen and moderate potassium. And this in combination also can impair the availability of magnesium to the cows. Similar to our program for grass tetany in the springtime, these can be offset with supplying additional magnesium, roughly 10% to 12% in our 4-ounce mineral should be adequate to offset this interaction with nitrogen and potassium and ensure that our cows have adequate magnesium status.